Welcome to this e-pill to introduce the way of life to you. The way of life is based on the hero's journey, which was introduced to us by Joseph Campbell in 1949. And Joseph Campbell, a literature scholar, he studied thousands and thousands of stories from different cultures, and what he concluded was that most of these stories share the same structure, and this structure he called the hero's journey. Because what he's saying is that every story is a journey in which the hero, which is nothing less than the main character, in which the hero transforms. Transformation is very important. This hero's journey is very useful for people to get meaning out of their own life, out of memories, etc. So that's why we use it also in our workshops, working with people to empower them and for personal growth. So, but before you can use this way of life, you have to introduce this structure to your students or your participants. So that's why we made this little introduction. And here it is. And as you can see in explaining the way of life, we always use Little Red Riding Hood. We use this fairy tale because it's known to many people all over the world. For example, even in the Arabic world, although Little Red Riding Hood is called Laila there. By the way, this fairy tale originates most probably also from the Middle East and is over 2,000 years old. The version we use, by the way, is the version of the Grimm brothers, which is in the West at least the most common version. Cool. So as you can see already a bit, but I will explain it further, there are different elements. But let's start first. It's the hero's journey. As I already said, the hero is nothing more than the or less than the main character. And yes, here we have her. It's Little Red Riding Hood herself. She's the hero in this story. So it's about her transformation. Then we go to the next element, and that's what we call situation A, or the situation once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a little girl wearing a red riding hood, etc., etc. This is the start situation, and the situation A, it's important that there are some characteristics, and so you give the context, but in this case, it's also important to mention that Little Red Riding Hood is rather naive. This is important to state because of the next situation, namely the situation B, the final situation. They lived happily ever after. But important in this situation is that the main character, the hero, transformed. In the case of Little Red Riding Hood, she's not a naive little girl anymore. She was in the beginning of the story. No, she knows how to deal with the dangers of the world, wolves, etc. And she is now a grown-up girl. This coming to age theme is also the theme of this fairy tale, but that's also another story. Cool. We go to the next element, the reason to go on the journey. That's why what we call the trigger, or sometimes you can say the one day. Little Red Riding Hood was playing with her toys, wearing a Red Riding Hood, was at home, etc., etc. And one day, one moment, there is her mother telling her that she has to bring a basket of with cookies and whatever else is in there to her ill grandmother. Okay. Let's go to the next elements which are in the story, and this is what we call the threats and the helpers, or the opposing and the helping powers, or supporting powers, whatever you want to call them. So let's first take a look at the threats. The wolf and the flowers. The flowers are the reason for Little Red Riding Hood to go off the path. And her mother said, don't go off the path. So this is the first obstacle. But the main obstacle is, of course, the wolf. You will see these are the very important elements in a story, because they make the story exciting. But then, of course, there's also the helper. And the helper supports the main character to at least reach situation B in a good way. It's sometimes also called a mentor. Important is that these threats and these helpers, or this supporting and opposing powers, are not only there to make the story exciting. They are also enabling the hero to come to this transformation, because Without the helpers and the threats, Little Red Riding Hood would just go to grandmother, give the basket with cookies and say, "Hi grandmother," and that's not a story. No insight was gained. So this is very important to deal, and this is very good in the meaning-making process. So this is what we use, enabling participants to get meaning out of their own story. After explaining this hero's journey structure to the participants, you can invite them to use this structure themselves to structurize their own life story or memories they have. Of course, sometimes it's important to trigger memories, and there are several memory triggering exercises available, and you can find them all everywhere on the internet. Anyway, in order to use this structure, it's also possible to ask some questions for every element, every phase in the structure. You might still recognize the different phases. That's what I just explained to you. So, but then you can add some, invite the participants to really write down, to describe situation A, to describe the trigger, to describe the journey, so the supportive and the opposing powers, and the situation B, using, for example, these questions. What was the moment your story began? Who were with you? And these questions are really meant for to get the participants really into the story. So here you have the story, the questions for the trigger. And indeed, the questions for the supportive powers, describe them, because then they get meaning. And the same counts for the opposing powers. By the way, important here is that you use the phrase how to deal with opposing powers and not how to fight or to conquer, because dealing with is a way more positive way of approaching them. And then, of course, last but not least, you have the situation B. Describe the situation B. And here, absolutely add the question, what did the journey taught you? What insights did you get? What transformation did you went through? And because that's what it's all about. So please use these questions, which are, by the way, also described in our handbook, in order to use this exercise. And I'm rather sure that you will, first of all, get beautiful stories, but most of all, the participants will get a lot of meaning for themselves out of these stories. And this meaning is necessary to build a foundation, a narrative foundation for their lives, etc. And this will contribute to their mental resilience